I am so happy to have you on. It's funny. We actually hosted Begin Health and the founder about 2.5, 3 years ago. So it's really exciting to watch how you guys have grown. For everybody that's joining in the audience, this is meant to be like an Ask a Specialist episode. And we are so lucky because today we're talking about microbiome mastery and how to nurture toddler health with Mary Zhu, who's Begin Health's registered dietitian. So with that, I'd love for you to kick it off and talk a little bit about, how you got involved with Begin Health, what it is in your background.
Sure. So my name's May, and I'm actually a registered dietitian nutritionist. I started my career in private practice in women's health, and now I am the registered dietitian here at Begin Health. And we are a toddler and kids microbiome company. So we help kids establish and maintain a healthy gut right from the start in early life through clean nutrition so that they can stay healthy for life. So preventative nutrition really is a big passion of mine. So I just really love getting to educate parents on how they can set their kids up for success in life now, starting with proper nutrition.
It's it's so important, and we definitely share a very similar passion. So for those that are joining that aren't really familiar about the natural nipple or what we aim or achieve to do, my background, I'm a primary care nurse practitioner, also super passionate about nutrition as a very preventative medicine. And my research and my PhD was focused on the microbiome development of preterm babies. So really what fascinated me the most is we have this unique opportunity in the first 1,000 days, especially of life, to change the type of microbes that inhabit. We call them our bodies, but we are really, 90% microbial DNA and 10% human. And that was really powerful and fascinating because there was always this argument in science of, is it nature or is it nurture? And when you see that you really have the opportunity through your choices and through what you're putting inside of you or your little one to enhance your health and to actually shift the way that these microbial DNA interact with our bodies and our inflammation, as well as train our immune system. That I was like, how do we enhance that and optimize that as much as possible for free? And so that's where the natural nipple was born, to help parents get that critical breast milk and the beneficial bacteria, and make it easier to provide breast milk especially those first 1,000 days. So I would love to just hear a little bit about, early biome development from your angle, because I could talk about the microbes, but you're really knowledgeable about the foods and the type of probiotics that are actually going to help enhance the good bacteria. So maybe we start with a little vocabulary lesson. It's our field, but maybe those joining don't know what microbiome is.
Yeah, sure. So the microbiome is what I refer to as just like this like really intricate environment that lives in our intestines, our digestive system. So it's just this collection of bacteria. There's like viruses, there's like thousands and thousands of strains of different bacteria, but essentially the microbiome is a collection of all these strains. So they could be good or bad, and depending on if they're good or bad, they can impact our health status now and later on in life.
Absolutely. And the interesting thing in terms of like there being a critical role and a balance is what we saw, at least like very early in preterm babies, is there are types of microbes that are associated with much more inflammation. And especially in the neonatal setting where I was focused was how do we reduce those type of bacteria that are causing, they basically like live on the lining of the intestine, and they because they're causing inflammation through the type of inflammatory proteins that they're able to signal, they actually like widen. Think of your skin becoming much more permeable, but that's the last thing that you want to have happen in a very vulnerable preterm infant or newborn's gut, because then all of the stool, which is meant to be leaving the body that has a lot of toxins, can enter the bloodstream. And that's what we call necrotizing enterocolitis when that begins to happen, and that can lead to sepsis. So I say that because it sounds really It sounds really like an an abstract thing, like, oh, microbes that live in our gut, but the impacts they have on our early health and development is so, so critical. So I'm curious if you wanted to share from your perspective some insights that actually are positive signals of microbial and gut health. Like, what do we look for?
Yeah, I mean, early microbiome development in infants is absolutely crucial. Like you were saying, the status of an infant's microbiome not only tells us about the state of their current health, but it's also associated with the trajectory of their long-term health as they grow into their toddler, teen, and adult years. And so when we look at it, the research we have on the gut now, we know that poor gut health now is increasing our kids' risk for chronic health conditions later in life. And these conditions include conditions up to like allergies, asthma, diabetes, obesity. Even now, with the studies on the gut brain axis, this can also include mental health disorders like depression and anxiety. And so, when we're looking at indicators of health, we look at when it comes to a balanced and healthy microbiome, things we look for is and so, how's your toddler or your baby's digestion, right? Because a balanced microbiome can actually help reduce the risk of those common digestive issues like diarrhea, constipation, and bloating. When we look at a balanced and healthy microbiome, we also look at nutrient absorption. So, depending on the amount of good gut bacteria we have in the microbiome, can impact our nutrient absorption because good gut microbes can actually help break down nutrients for absorption. And
Yeah.
we also look at immune function. We know that 80% of our immune cells live in the gut. So cultivating a balanced gut can actually help and support our little ones. And then we also look at cognitive development. So there are studies that are showing the relationship pathways on the gut and the brain. And so by nurturing those good gut microbes in the microbiome, that can really help set our kids up for life. And the two most studied probiotic or good gut bug strains right now are bifidobacteria and lactobacillus.
Yeah, I love that you gave like really concrete names of like beneficial bacteria. Something, May, that I thought was really interesting and maybe interesting for our audience too was there was actually almost a change in our human evolution because we nearly eradicated Bifidobacillus infantis in the 60s. So there was some struggles with women to continue breastfeeding at that time. This was like very early in the formula marketing era. And this is a really critical commensal or beneficial microbe for our human health and evolution because we need it to make vitamin B12. You need B12 to be able to make blood cells. So if you think about that, if you think about how important some of these microbes are and actually nurturing the environment for the good ones to grow, I think that's sort of the lens that people and parents who are just getting introduced into this field, because there's a lot of information that new parents are being bombarded with. But if you just think of, I like the analogy of real estate. And if you think of early real estate and you just bought a plot of land, the kind of buildings that you set up in the beginning are going to be really difficult to remove later on. It's kind of hard to, um, change entire urban development structures. So you want to make sure that you're really enriching the gut as it's developing with the ones that we know are beneficial. And you listed some of those. Um, so I'd like to maybe if new or expecting parents are like, how do I delve more into this topic? What do I do next? Like, what are nutrition strategies for a healthy microbiome now that we've discussed what it is and its importance? Where would you begin?
I mean, diet, I may be a little biased because I love nutrition, but diet is such a major factor. A varied and fiber rich diet that includes lots of fruits and vegetables provides those nutrients to fuel the growth of the beneficial and good gut bacteria in the microbiome. And some studies say the gut microbiome of toddlers who consume a more diverse diet is more and a more diverse and robust diet actually has better health outcomes later on compared to those who have limited food choices. So I always like to start with the diet, a high fiber fiber-rich diet. Um, I like the inclusion of naturally occurring probiotic foods, so fermented foods like sauerkraut, yogurt, kefir. Those are naturally good sources of a good bacteria,
Mm.
and that will help nurture the environment of the microbiome. And
Yep.
so when we think about diet, it's so hard to get kids to consume the right amount of fiber and fruits and vegetables just because during those transition years, it's there's so many different factors that affect into how they view food and the food choices they select. But overall, I like to start with a diet and just including as many fruits and vegetables as possible. One particular set of fiber that I really like to suggest for parents to consume are your prebiotic fibers. So the prebiotic fibers are just this really special set of fiber sources that come naturally in some foods. So I always like to provide the acronym, the ABCs of prebiotics. So your apples, your blueberries, your carrots, those are just naturally occurring prebiotic rich foods. Um, those are easier for parents to kind of introduce early on just because they're colorful, and kids kind of like a variety of textures and flavors. And so I like to start with prebiotic fiber, inclusion of naturally occurring probiotic foods like kefir, yogurt, and then one category that I also like to emphasize is hydration. A lot of times when parents are introducing fiber rich fruits and vegetables, they're not increasing their water intake, and those two really go hand in hand to help fiber kind of move along the system.
These are such excellent tips. And I think that where Begin Health and Natural Nipple are such clear synergistic partners is like at the introduction of solid foods, it's really like as you're easing out of your breastfeeding journey or providing breast milk, you have the opportunity to do so much great education in terms of the type of microbial diverse and nutrient dense and fiber rich foods that really support that biome development that truly does influence the way you eat, think, and function moving forward. And I think to back it up, like when the science started becoming a hot topic was after a patient, like I don't know if anyone has experienced Clostridium difficile or been in a hospital where they walked by a door and there was a sign on the door that said C. diff. You will never forget if you've walked by a patient that has that because it's just such a terrible infection that occurs in adults. But the way that we discovered really how critical the microbiome was they had to do something called a fecal transplant. It was so severe that they needed to move all of the stool out of this adult's highly infected intestines and transplant because you can't have a totally sterile environment actually. You need the benefit of some of the good microbes present to protect those walls of the intestinal lining. And when they transferred this healthy person's stool into this adult intestinal environment, they started realizing that not only did the infection go away that was life threatening, that could have caused sepsis, but because the microbial diversity um, actually it had higher diversity, it had less what we call proteobacteria, which is associated with a lot of inflammation in the gut setting. You might have heard of leaky gut, or like we talked about necrotizing enterocolitis in infants. This person's diabetes went away and they ended up dropping all of this weight. And then the scientists and the doctors started looking and saying, oh wow, this is all because we shifted the kind of microbes that are living inside of the individual. And I just mentioned that because no matter where you are in your journey of learning about the microbes and their importance, if you're, an expecting mom, you can also begin integrating some of May's dietary insights to improve your own microbiome composition. And if I could take 1 minute to explain why that's really important at the start of life, um, really I wanted to look at as you're coming into the world as a brand new clean slate, so to speak, like you start actually getting inoculated with microbes from your mom while you're in utero and then through the placenta as well. And these are all good and they're beneficial as far as we know for the most part. And when you come through the vaginal canal, there's also a lot of really important microbes. So, where we're seeing infants that miss out, and unfortunately, you can't always control if you need to have, an emergency C section or if you need to have perinatal around the birth process antibiotics. Those things that we see are kind of wiping out the early colonization of good bacteria. What we could always control for a new baby going from womb to world was giving breast milk longer. And so that's sort of where the natural nipple hyper focuses, is like in the preterm setting, and as the mom is trying to get a good latch to really support and make providing that very important first food and life vaccine easier, because 92% of parents were struggling. So that's where we come in and make that transition as simple as possible from bottle to breast. I say that because then, of course, as you're going back into the workforce, or if you have complications with breastfeeding, it's not easy, you may desire to supplement, and that may be necessary. So, can you talk a little bit about where Begin Health's journey starts?
Sure. So when I think about infant nutrition, and particularly, we know that human breast milk is just really the gold standard, because it provides essentially all the nutrients the infant needs to grow healthy into the toddler years. So breast milk contains this really important source of carbohydrate called HMOs, or human milk oligosaccharides. And HMOs are actually the third most abundant component of human breast milk, and they're considered as a prebiotic. So that just means that it's going to feed the good gut bugs in your kid's microbiome. And in those infant years, we really want to see a high amount of bifidobacteria. And so having those HMOs early on in life is really, really important to set your kids up for success in terms of nutrition. And we know that prebiotic fibers are really, really important. We already talked about how they're naturally occurring in plant foods like apples, sweet potatoes, and carrots. And we also know that 95% of kids and adults in the US do not consume enough of daily recommended intake of fiber. And so the role of Begin really is to support your kid's journey after birth, knowing that there just might be so many different variables that offer like a barrier to your kids getting those nutrients like the prebiotic fibers or just fiber in general. And so there's really just this notable study that shows that with HMOs, good gut bacteria will actually break down HMOs. So we take bacteria like bifidobacteria, for example, it actually will help break down those HMOs so that the HMOs are breaking down into what we call short chain fatty acids. And short chain
Yes.
acids will actually promote, they have this like anti-inflammatory effect. So if your gut is really inflamed, it's going to help with those inflammation in the gut cell lining. And so this is really, really, really important, because by including our daily growing up prebiotics, which is a really unique blend of, it's two ingredients. It contains HMOs and it contains chicory root fiber. So each serving provides 3 grams of fiber, and essentially our gut bacteria, when we ingest this prebiotic, will ferment the prebiotics and then use it as fuel to turn it into the short chain fatty acids. And from there, it really just helps promote better digestion. It supports immunity. It supports cognitive growth. There's so much research on the gut brain axis that when we include something as important as HMOs and prebiotics, we just know that it's going to set your kids up for success later in life and reduce the risk of chronic health conditions like obesity or asthma or allergies.
Absolutely. And they're even finding, roles with neurodivergent and ADHD um, type manifestations later if there has been this critical imbalance of the microbes, and that, as you're saying, the gut brain axis, it really impacts the way that we're able to think and function, because these microbes also play a role in the neurotransmitter levels that we have present later in life. And we know dopamine's like our reward molecule, and it's our ability to have motivation and focus. And if you think about it from a really simplistic standpoint, it's like what kind of microbes am I employing? What kind of army do I have? Are they working for me and helping me focus and be motivated and feel serotonin, which is, peace and ease and calm? Or are they working against me? And you're really making it easy going back to and emphasizing on the importance of those first 3 years and really getting the army that lives with you for most of the rest of your life all in line and all employed doing the things that you want them to do. And that might sound like a harsh analogy, but what I love so much about Begin Health and what I love about what we're doing at the Natural Nipple is we are acknowledging how difficult it can be to find the absolute best possible thing to do for your child in today's day and age in modern society. We're acknowledging how challenging breastfeeding can be if you don't have the support of community or your partner, or you're trying to go back to work. So we're really making better tools and also taking the science, I think, and making it literally digestible. And the beautiful thing I just wanted to touch on, those short chain fatty acids, is that all of this knowledge isn't to overwhelm parents. Like, oh my God, do I have access to, enough of the fiber rich foods that have inulin, which is also found, in dandelion root. And we know that this is the food that the good bacteria that we've talked about really need to thrive. And as you were saying, to take HMOs and make them into short chain fatty acids. But when use Begin Health, if you're having access to not a lot of food directly from the land, or like not a lot of seasonal fresh grown fruits and vegetables, this actually, makes your job so much easier as a parent, because your little one's not missing out on some of the really key, not only microbes, but nutrients you need for the microbes that are responsible in repairing the gut. The short chain fatty acids you mentioned are quite literally like a medicine. They go in and they're repairing that widening gut that causes that bloating, that colic, the overall fatigue and malaise, and what is often termed as leaky gut syndrome, or even more seriously, necrotizing enterocolitis. So we have a question from the audience, and we have 2 more minutes left. So pepper in your questions now, but how can we introduce early prebiotics? She wasn't in earlier on the call.
So prebiotics are actually naturally occurring in human breast milk. So if you are breastfeeding and you haven't introduced solids yet, you're actually getting the full benefits from human breast milk. But our daily growing up prebiotics is really recommended for age 1 and up. So after that transition to solid foods, the introduction of prebiotics is what we recommend. And we really recommend consistently incorporating those varied whole food sources and incorporating prebiotics through like a daily supplement to really establish that gut microbiome balance.
Excellent. And if we don't have any more questions, I think really high level, I'll just go ahead and recap what we talked about. Really how, we can master our microbes. And we went through, not only if you're expecting mom, what you can do to make your own microbiome optimal for bringing your child from womb to world, at the very, very most vulnerable point of life, what you can do to support providing breast milk for longer with the natural nipple. And then also with Begin, when you can begin to not only introduce solid foods, but also supplement with the good prebiotics and probiotics. We have one more question. So do you want to take this one, May?
Yes, so we have a question that says, does introducing healthy foods have an effect of developing taste for it as a child grows?
That's a good one.
That's a really good one because as we know, kids, it's so hard to get kids to eat the right foods. And aside from nutrition, I think that when we think about other kind of lifestyle factors, I think that food modeling is so important. It's really important to be mindful of our food choices as parents because kids learn a lot by observing. And so as mothers and parents, it's really important to lead by and model healthy behaviors for your own kids. So your kids are probably more likely to try something new and eat healthier if they see their families and peers doing the same. So getting them involved and setting the example in your family, get them involved in the meal prep process, get them to try out new things together, and so that they have this positive association with these. They really feel trivial at the time, but it really, really helps our kids build that healthy relationship with food over time. And this is what we do, why we do what we do at Begin, because we know how hard it is for kids to get that addition of fiber, the addition of prebiotics. So one really big um, one really big factor of why our parents love Begin is because it's tasteless and textureless. So we're able to add that easily into their water or their favorite beverage or their morning applesauce, and they're unable to taste or know that there's like a texture associated with it. And so it's just like a really, really easy way for parents to know that they're getting the nutrition support they need without all the fussiness that comes with kids not wanting to eat certain foods.
I think that was so well said, May. And to end it off with a little story, like it is so powerful food modeling and how it sticks with you the rest of your life. Because I very specifically remember my yaya, my grandmother, introducing me to different colored grapes. And she was like, "This is God's candy. Look, it's so yummy." Like this was like her language for trying to get me to be enticed by it. And that stuck with me the rest of my life. I always love grapes, and they're a great source of fiber. So I think it's excellent, really practical tools. Where can parents find Begin?
So we are available on beginhealth.com. We are on all of our social media channels. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook. We have a really robust constipation support group on Facebook. A lot of people join, or a lot of parents join to get that extra support from other parents who are going through the same struggles with constipation. And we are also now available on Amazon as well.
Congratulations. And for those that are joining, The Natural Nipple can be found on thenaturalnipple.com. We are also beginning to distribute at hospitals. So our first one is University of Southern California, Verdugo Hills. So if you're a parent in Hollywood, you can have the confidence that your baby is going to be able to be fed with the safest, slowest flow on the market that is most like breast. And if the hospital that you're going to doesn't currently carry us, bring in the product. We offer the preemie available on the website now as well. So I just wanted to thank you so much for your time, May, as well as that delayed start. But I hope you have an amazing weekend and thank everyone for joining.